أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Welcome. The reflections we're about to share come from material compiled by Mir Ali Shah. And today we're going to dive into Sūrah al-Munāfiqūn. It's a chapter of the Quran that gets right to the heart of one of the deepest challenges we all face, that feeling of being divided on the inside.
You know, it's so easy to read this chapter and think it's about them, some other group of people from long ago. But really, it's a mirror. It's a mirror held up to our own hearts. And as this quote says, it's all about what happens when we say the right words, when we speak the truth, but deep down our hearts haven't really bought in.
To really get this, we have to kind of paint a picture of the scene. This is revealed in Medina, right? A time and place where Islam wasn't just a new movement anymore, it was the social fabric of the city. And this created a totally new kind of spiritual test. It wasn't about facing open enemies, but about something much more subtle. The challenge of fitting in on the outside while your heart hasn't truly surrendered on the inside.
So the core idea here is this word nifaq. Now, the Quran isn't just talking about telling a lie here and there. It's describing something much deeper, a fracture, a split in the soul itself. It's this profound state of being where what we show the world just doesn't line up with who we are on the inside. And to help us navigate this, we need this really essential framework, the idea of the outer and the inner. The Arabic terms are Zahir and Batin. The Zahir, well, that's everything on the surface that people can see, our actions, our words, how we present ourselves. But the Batin, that's the unseen world inside, our real intentions, our fears, the true state of our heart. And this surah is all about that painful, empty space that can grow between the two.
Okay, so let's start with the outside, with the Zahir. What does this inner division actually look like? The Quran gives us this incredibly vivid picture of an impressive but ultimately empty shell.
Just listen to that imagery. I mean, it's absolutely stunning, isn't it? They have this impressive physical presence, they speak so well you can't help but listen, but on the inside, they're like hollowed-out logs, just propped up against a wall. There's a beautiful form, for sure, but there's no life, no real substance holding it up from within.
And what's so fascinating is how all these different ways of knowing point to the very same thing. You've got classical commentators who looked at this and said, see, it's a strong appearance, but it's lacking any real moral substance. The Quran itself points out their deep insecurity, how they use their oaths like a shield, not as a sign of their faith, but as a kind of social armor. And, even modern psychology has a term for this, performative belonging. And it's something that just completely erodes the trust in any community.
So that's the impressive outer shell. But now, the Quran does what it always does so beautifully. It takes us deeper, into the inner reality, the lived experience of what it feels like to carry around that hollow core.
Wow, this verse just brilliantly captures that internal state. Can you imagine living with that constant gnawing anxiety? A heart that's not truly at rest with God is a heart that's always on guard, always scanning for threats. Every loud noise, every shout feels like it's aimed right at them. And this isn't just paranoia. It's the natural psychological state that comes from being so deeply out of sync with yourself.
And this idea of a divided heart, it's understood across so many traditions. The great Sufi master Ibn Arabi, he just nails it. He explains that this kind of fear pops up the moment our reliance shifts from the Creator to created things, like our reputation or money or what other people think. Modern psychology calls the tension that this creates cognitive dissonance. And of course, as Rumi put it so perfectly, the ego builds that impressive outer form for one reason, to hide the emptiness inside.
And all of this brings us to the moment where the surah makes this really critical pivot. The warning is no longer just about them. Suddenly, it becomes a direct, urgent, and very personal call for believers to turn inward. So the Quran is essentially asking us point blank, do you think this is just a story about some other group of people? Or could it be that the seeds of this exact same condition are present in every single human heart, including our own?
And here it is. This is the turn. The path to that fractured, divided state, it doesn't begin with some huge, dramatic declaration of disbelief. Nope, it's much quieter. It begins with distraction. It begins when the very things we love and work for, our wealth, our families, our goals, start to pull our attention away from the remembrance of God. The surah is telling us that nifaq doesn't start with denial. It starts with simple neglect.
And the great spiritual master Ibn Ata'illah gives us this profound insight into how this happens. He says, delay is the ego's absolute favorite tool. We're always promising ourselves we'll be more sincere later.
We'll be more generous, later. More focused in our prayer, later. But sincerity can only live right here, right now. That state of inner division, of hypocrisy, it finds its perfect home in postponement.
So in this last part, we finally arrive at a seeker's sincere prayer, because the whole point of this surah isn't to make us point fingers. It's to help us turn inward and offer us a path back to wholeness. And that path begins with sincere reflection. So let's just take a moment and sit with this first question. In what areas of my life do I speak the language of faith, but my heart hasn't quite caught up yet? Where do the words of reliance and trust come easily, but that deep feeling of surrender is still lagging behind? And the second question, how much of what I believe and how I act is really shaped by a deep, calm trust in God, and how much of it is actually shaped by fear? Fear of losing something, fear of what people think, fear of the future.
And finally, this one. This is so subtle but so important. Where in my spiritual life am I just procrastinating, putting off what needs to be done right now and calling it patience? Where am I waiting for the perfect moment when the only moment I really have is this one?
And so, in that spirit of reflection, let us conclude with this beautiful supplication. O unifier of what is scattered, gather our hearts before our words. Do not let us meet you fluent but fractured. Make our reliance whole, our remembrance present, and our return undelayed.
Ba Ming.